Hi everyone, welcome back to Big Data Hadoop course. Today we'll be talking about Introduction to Hadoop. Earlier sessions we saw that because of big data, the earlier distributed systems that we had, they faced a lot of problems, and when big data was exposed to them, they finally said that okay boss, I cannot work anymore, and they did quit. So when this quitting happened, few of the problems were realized that okay, they had huge dependency on the network, transportation of data was too much, scaling was a big issue, and partial failures were difficult to handle. So to solve all these problems and to tackle this big problem of big data, we felt the need of getting something new, getting something more reliable, having something more efficient that could solve all these problems. So we came up with this new architecture framework called as Hadoop. So talking about Hadoop, Apache Hadoop Software Library is a framework that allows for the distributed processing of large datasets across clusters of computers using simple programming models. In more simplistic terms, Hadoop is a framework that facilitates functioning of several machines together to achieve the goal of analyzing large datasets. But now wait a second. Who was the first one who realized that okay, big data is going to be a pinch? So the largest source of data, the Google, was the first one who realized that okay, big data is going to be a problem in the future. And so they came up with their own framework called as Google File System, the GFS. They also realized that they are not the only one who are facing this problem of big data, and very soon others may also face the same problem. So they released their white papers, the white papers of their Google File System, into the open source community, from where the developers at Yahoo, like Doc Cutting, along with the Apache Corporation, came up with this new framework called as Hadoop. So Google created its own distributed computing framework and published papers about the same. Hadoop was developed on the basis of the papers released by Google. Core Hadoop consists of two components, the Hadoop distributed file system and the MapReduce. A set of machines running HDFS and MapReduce is known as Hadoop cluster. Individual machines are called as nodes, and a cluster can have as many as one to several thousand nodes. Before moving ahead, let's do one thing. Let's try installing some game on a Windows platform. So today what we'll do is we'll install a game called NFS on Windows. So what are the steps? The first step is installing your operating system. Once you are done with the operating system, now the next step is to get the CD and start your installation. Once you are done with the installation of the game, what happens is a folder is created in the program files directory. Now what about this folder? What does this folder have? This folder contains all the .dll files, all the .bat files, and some exe files. Now what does this DLL file have? These DLL file have custom classes, predefined functions, stored procedures, and some settings. Talking about the bat files, again these bat files have some configurations and some settings. Now, if we try differentiating between these settings in the .dll files and the .bat files, then what we can observe is all the settings that are included in this .dll files, they are like, the default settings, and you're prohibited, or you're advised not to change the settings because changing these settings may have a huge impact on the entire system. So I'll call it as, non-configurable settings. Remember, you can still change the settings because everything is a code everywhere. So you can still change the settings, but it is advised that you don't change it. It is advised that you don't change it. Okay. And if we talk about these settings, then these are some easily configurable settings. Okay. So next thing, the exe files. So what do you have in the exe files? Okay, first again, talking about the settings, I just remember about one game. It's called the Caesar 2. It's a game similar to Age of Empires, and I have actually tried this. So there are some .bat files in that game, and one of that bat files, has all the settings in there that if you want to build a palace, you'll have to shed like 5,000 gold coins. If you want to build a house, you'll have to shed like 50 gold coins. So what I did, I went into the bat files and I just made the changes that, okay, instead of minus, I made a plus there. So next time, whenever I built a house, 50 gold coins actually got added to my credit instead of getting deducted from there. So this is just an example that, okay, these settings which are there inside the bat files are easily configurable, and it won't have a huge impact on the other configurations and settings or the custom files and everything. Okay, now talking about the exe files again. So if I talk about the game NFS, then what I'll get is I'll get a nfs1.exe file, then I'll get nfs2.exe file, then I'll get nfsunderground.exe file, and so on and so forth. Now what happens? I go inside this folder and I click on nfs1.exe. I double click on nfs1.exe. Immediately after this, what happens is this exe goes to all these DLL and BAT files and inquires him that, okay, somebody has double clicked on me. So what should I be doing? Then these DLL and BAT files inform the exe file that, okay, you need to open the game window. Then once the game window is open, I click on play now. Then again this exe file goes to the DLL and BAT files and inquires that, okay, now somebody has clicked on play now. What should I be doing now? Then these files, DLL and BAT, inform the exe file that, okay, now you have to start the game. So what I'm trying to convey is whatever operations or whatever things that .exe files do, it is already predefined inside somewhere inside these .dll and .bat files. Okay, and in this way you'll install the game and you'll start running your NFS game on your Windows platform. Now, why I took this Windows platform example, because it's a daily use thing for us. We have done this many a times. And now if we take a reference of the same installation on Windows and try to install your Hadoop cluster, then it will give a picture that, okay, this is what happens with Windows. So I can easily compare now with Hadoop. So now that we are okay with the Windows installation, now let's go ahead and, install a cluster of your own, install a Hadoop cluster of our own. So what I'll do is I'll go to the market and I'll grab 4 servers. Okay, so I'll go to the market and I'll grab 4 servers. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let's make it 3. so that we have plenty of space to demonstrate everything. Okay, so my servers are here now. The next thing is I need somebody to communicate with these servers. So I'll have my laptop in place. So this laptop now would be an interface of communication for these servers. So in Hadoop terminology, I'll call it as a Hadoop cluster, a Hadoop client. So now I have my Hadoop client, which will be able to communicate with these clusters. So next step, what I'll do is I'll install operating system on all these servers. Now talking about operating system, it can be any Linux or Unix, or with recent updates from Hortonworks, it can be your Windows platform also. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and install operating system on my server. As soon as I install operating system on the servers, what happens is I need to reserve 30% of the total storage space available. So this goes my operating system with the 30% storage space. So I'll do this in all the machines. Okay. So now I have brought the servers, I've connected them with my laptop, and now I have installed the operating system on those. So the next step is I'll go and install my Hadoop on each of these servers. So basically the package that I'm using here for the demonstration purpose is a sudo package, because the same package we are going to use in the actual practicals. So I'll be demonstrating this particular thing in the same guidelines. So what I'll do is I'll go and download a Hadoop pseudo distributed package, and I'll install it on all these machines. So as soon as I install my Hadoop on all these machines, what happens is I get some .jar files. Now talking about these jar files on a whole, what these jar files have is similar to what the .dll files had. So they have some predefined functions, some base classes, and some stored procedures. Along with this, they also have some settings. So I'll get these jar files on all the three servers. Along with these jar files, what I'll get is some XML files. Apart from these jar files and XML files, like I have had the .dll.bat files, I also had the .exe files. Similar to this, I'll get some services or processes inside my Hadoop installation. Now these services and processes, you can either call it as service or process, or in Hadoop terminology, you can also call them as daemons. Now these daemons run in individual JVMs. So JVM is nothing but a Java virtual machine. So what I'll get is I'll get 5 JVMs. So I'll get my name node. The second one is I'll get my data node. The third one is I'll get something called as a secondary name node. Fourth thing is I'll get something called as a job tracker. And the fifth thing that I'll be getting is something called as a task tracker. Similarly, I'll get the job tracker in all the 3 machines. And I'll get the task tracker in all the 3 machines. So talking about the jar files are predefined functions, consist of predefined functions, the base classes, stored procedures, the settings, some configurations and everything. And on a similar note, talking about the XML files, what we have is some configurations and settings. And there are 3 such XML files. So one is core site.xml, second one is hdfs site.xml, and the third one is mapred site.xml. So in all, I'll be getting 3 XML files: core site.xml, hdfs site.xml, and mapred site.xml, which will store some configurations and settings. Now again, comparing the settings that we get in both these files, in jar files, I get those settings which have a huge impact on the larger sector of the cluster or on a larger sector of other settings and configurations, or it has a huge impact overall. And talking about the XML files, these contain some configurations that are very easily configurable, and the settings which you are advised to play with, and you can monitor or you can modify it based on your own convenience and your own needs. So basically this can be stated as your .dll files and this can be stated as your .bat files. Next up, talking about these five daemons. So this name node is somebody who handles the HDFS, and he is the master of the HDFS. The data node, on the other hand, is again somebody who handles HDFS, but he's a slave. Again, the secondary name node is a daemon or a service that handles your HDFS, but I can call it as a backup service or cold backup, not exactly backup, but we'll talk about secondary name node later. But at this moment, let's call it as a cold backup. And this again is a master service. Talking about the job tracker again. So the job tracker again is a service, but this time this is a service which handles MapReduce. And he's the master. So he's the master of MapReduce, whereas NameNode is the master of HDFS. Talking about the task tracker, similar to the data node, the task tracker is also a slave, but he is a slave process which would be handling MapReduce. So from all this architecture, what we can visualize is basically your Hadoop cluster consists of some jar files, some XML files, and 5 daemons or services. Your name node, which is the master of HDFS, data node, which is a slave of HDFS, secondary name node, which is a master process, but it's kind of a backup, job tracker is a master of MapReduce, and task tracker, which is a slave of MapReduce. But what exactly, see, when we were discussing the first couple of slides, we said that, okay, there are only two components that you get when you install Hadoop, the two core components. One is the HDFS and one is the MapReduce. So, okay, now we have seen the services or daemons that handle this HDFS and MapReduce, but what exactly is HDFS and what exactly is MapReduce? So let's try to have a look at that. So your HDFS stands for Hadoop Distributed File System. Now talking some more stuff about HDFS. So HDFS is a read-only flat file system. HDFS is a read-only flat file system. HDFS can store data only in text format. So basically your HDFS, it can store data only in text format and that only in a read-only format. Now it doesn't mean that you cannot store images or videos or any streaming data inside your HDFS. You can store it, but no matter what you store, no matter what you input or no matter what output you want, it will always be stored in the text format. Similar to what your computers do. No matter what you are inputting or getting the output from the computer, but inside the computer it is always zeros and ones. So based on similar guidelines, Your HDFS will always store data in a text format, and it is a read-only flat file system, which means that once the data is inside your HDFS, there is no way of changing or modifying it. If ever you want to change or modify anything from your HDFS, what you can simply do is delete the file present inside your Hadoop cluster and replace it with a new one, or just put a new one. Now, talking about your MapReduce. So we all know in mathematics, there are four basic programming models: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. And each of these programming models have specific formats and specific rules, and they work on the same rules or the same guidelines. Similarly, in Hadoop, there is only one programming model called as the MapReduce. So this programming model has basically two phases into it. One is the map phase, and the second one is the reduce phase. Now, all the real world applications that you want to process using Hadoop, you have to make sure that they are modeled in the map reduce paradigm. You have to make sure that you can break all the real world applications into a map phase and a reduce phase. And this is how your entire Hadoop cluster looks like. So this is all from my side for this video. Stay tuned for the next session where we'll be talking about the Hadoop job process. Thanks a lot.